All right, well, welcome to this quick intro video on some of the new things in PD Artist. This one's kind of aiming to explain a few things to the total novice who has never seen PD Artist or Project Dogwaffle for that matter. Project Dogwaffle comes in several versions and flavors, and there is an Artist edition as much also as a Howler edition. And the Howler edition is the one that's more complete and has everything. So what you can do is you can look at that, the documentation on that one to see what was new in earlier version or what's new in version 9.6, particularly 9.5, and then also before that 9.2, where there was an Artist edition. Last time it was 9.2. But you simply need to ignore the animation and video tools. But still, you can do things like these and create beautiful animated scenes. This one here is a slideshow with a little bit of music by Jose Luis Suazo. Still images like these can definitely be composited or created. The background image also, in particular, with the 3D designer. And so one thing I wanted to show you is just how to get started doing that. Because, let's face it, PD Artist is primarily a paint program, but with a twist. It has a number of things. It has, of course, a number of predefined brushes. You can see that here on the large airbrush. You can also click on the brush tool, and it might appear as a single colon with the additional colors and other tools here on the right side. It's called the sidebar. You can arrange that, and I highly recommend that you go to the layout under the window menu and change your sidebar to your liking. Make it go to the right, to the left, have the toolbar here floating, or 2 column, 1 column, all sorts of different choices in color styles as well, color patterns or themes rather. And once you have your layout you like, you can right click on many of these tools, such as the brush here. That gives you the same menu for predefined brushes as this one. But there's also another thing here called the Browse Media, and with the media browser you can collect your own additional brushes and also find shortcuts to a variety of others. And so we have stickers, some 3D brushes here that are collections of vinyl sticker images created by a French artist who's nicely donated those to us to include with the program. There are lots of different types of graphic effects, modeling clay for instance, or smearing effects. And then of course more advanced brushes, particle brushes up here, which you can also access through a couple of these shortcuts here, particles, bristle brushes, and so on. So the particle brushes, if you pin this down, you'll see that you can use that to enable regular particle brushes, and that's great for fireworks and all sorts of different effects. There's a number of predefineds you can load, such as baddie grass. And so for instance, if you erase the background here and create some sort of initial sky, render that something like this, you have that initial render, then you use your particle brush to quickly create some grass in the foreground, and you see how quickly you can create some nice displays like that. You can also go to the bristle mode, switch to that, and with the bristle mode you have perhaps a very different experience with brushes, some pretty fine styles here. There's also orbital brushes, and orbital brushes are kind of orbiting in 3D around your cursor, kind of a hive of a flock of birds, a flock of bees, a beehive that's tracking you and following your cursor. And you can enable an elastic spring with that, so it kind of flies around. Let's go erase this and see that. So all sorts of different effects. And then the foliage brushes with the load, which draws a full tree, and that in fact also does all sorts of visual effects on that. So it draws the tree, you have it subject to mouse movement and speed and other things. You can enable or disable the shading. It's still doing the self-shading too. You see the ambient occlusion is calculated here in a post-process, and within less than a second you see a more depth looking or 3D looking tree set. And that's a great tool to combine together with all sorts of other effects too. So for instance here you could create some sort of foreground trees or branches, and then we can go back to the particles, let's say the grass, and this time I'm going to use something like winter branches at the bottom here. There's a few more, And then I'm going to go back to loading my grass. There's a couple of different styles. I like the baddie grass. Let's grab this one here. And so it looks like we're at the abyss here, or on the edge of a beautiful scenery. The thing we need to do is define that scenery. So let's get started on that. Let's go store this image. We might get back to that later. It's a good thing to store things as they become available or as they are done. Let me disable the brush here. And I'm going to go and create a starting point for my sort of a landscape in the background. And this is inspired by a number of tutorials we have called the river canyons. So I'm going to right click on this tool here where you have some gradient tools, the linear gradient in particular. I'm going to go with something like this, or perhaps grab the regular gradient down here, something like it's just a plain white, black to white, that is. Alright, so let's go with something like this, and then go to another filter, which is the render plasma noise. And in the render plasma noise, you could use just that as your elevation map, but having that gradient before and then using this one in difference mode, you get a little bit of a carved canyon going along that, especially if you adjust and click a few times the scale here until you find a nice looking canyon going through that. Purely randomized and case of good luck there until you find one you like. So you have a river going through here and some high mountain peaks. Let's grab that, OK that, store this because that's an interesting step to remember and get back to if necessary. And then let's go to the magic of what this tutorial is all about, and that's to create, use a 3D designer to create this as a landscape. Right. In version 9.2 we already introduced the Puppy Ray tracer, which can take this as an elevation map as well. The 3D designer was there before as well, but it has evolved a lot in this version, so I wanted to show you that a little bit. In fact, let me go cancel this out a little bit, move it down, scale it a little bit to move it to the left, so we just have a little bit better view of everything, even with the other interface coming up here. So transform, 3D designer, there it is. It remembers the most recent settings. So we have the amplitude up here that takes the elevation map, and you can show the elevation map rather than the object color. You can show what the elevation map looks like. Right, there it is. That's the image we just had, and we still see it down here. So this image is serving as an elevation map, and we can modulate the amplitude right there. But there's a lot more we can do with that to give it more visual realism or interesting look. One of them is we'll want to add a little bit of ray traced shadows. So there's a ray trace for this light source. There's two light sources. There's this one here and the second one down here. The one up here will have an option for ray tracing, let's say soft shadows. And we can adjust the altitude, the azimuth. We can rotate this thing around. Let's say we have it in the upper left corner there, and the zenith far away, so we need to increase the light range, the intensity a little bit. Perhaps something like that. And then we may want to also increase the light from this light source. This one I'm going to go all the way up, all the way down. Actually, it doesn't matter for the zenith, all the way in the center. But then we have sort of a top-down light that shines from the top onto the scene. And that means basically a skylight. So we need to change the background color to kind of go in sync with that. If we want the light to be kind of bluish, we should see the background kind of bluish. If you're on Mars or some other strange planet, if the backlight is more of a reddish tint, something like this, then you probably will want to have a background color also that is you know, some sort of a dusty sandstorm appearance, something like that. And so the two things kind of come hand in hand and go together pretty well. So one thing we'll do is work a little bit more on that visual realism, and one thing obviously we want to do is add some erosion to that. So let's say we will probably have a bit of erosion that we want to see. Now here in the foreground, this mountain is going to be in our way. We can't really see much here if we tilt it to the side, so it'd be nice to flatten this one down a little bit. So I'm going to cancel out of this and use a brush here to just bring this down a little bit. Use a large airbrush and perhaps very low opacity so it doesn't do too much damage, but you can see how you can use that to kind of lower this to a very plateau look there, so to speak. Perhaps that's a little bit too much, so let me go undo that and just do a little bit like this, and then fade it also with the fade last action, so you have just a little bit of reduction in brightness and intensity. That might help. That might just bring it down low enough that we don't see too much of these mountains cover the ones in the background there. Alright, so let's go back into the 3D designer. There it is. And so now we do have indeed these mountains here a little bit closer, and we're ready to apply that erosion. So what I'll do is I'll go to enable the more, click the more button here. You'll see that gives you additional more options on the 3D designer interface. And one thing we'll do is we'll use the erosion right here. So let's give it a second or two, give it time to erode it, and now you see that it's applied the erosion all over there. You can zoom into that to see a little bit more. I mean, move the camera position into this or move the object closer to you. Now it has a very dry rock, sand rocky look. It would be nice to have some sediments too, so we can add those sediments right here and have them appear in a color that is kind of tantamount to the elevation. And if you want, you can instead give it a color that is perhaps a different combination of colors with grass, rock, and snow. Now, before you do that, you might want to store this one. So let's go store the texture, and you'll have a snapshot there, or so I think. It's a little bit covered here, but that's okay. We can store all sorts of other parameters here. Let's go and apply. Oh, we didn't have the texture. The texture is actually in the swap image. Right now, it's plain white. So what we need to do is really create the texture. And that one is the one that I was referring to a little bit earlier, where you can have the snow level go down, you can have the rocks in the middle, and then the grass down in the bottom of the valley. So one thing you can also do is say, let's put some sediments there for the snow to fill this all up, right? If this is like deep winter, you might not see much of that grass. So there's a little bit of that. You can change the smoothing there. You can change the intensity. All sorts of effects you can get from that. You can change, instead of grass, you might want to go back to that theme with the red rock coloration. And again, the smoothing, maybe you want to increase that so it kind of blurs or blends a little bit better there. Let's give it even 44. There you go. So you have that reddish color blend and mix gradually into the dark gray rock. Let's see. Some other things we can do is, like I said, adjust how much erosion we get, how much the sediments are filling these erosion up, all sorts of different things here. We can also add some fog level here in the distance, perhaps change the camera zoom here and move this back a little bit. And look at how different this now is from what we started, right? I mean, initially we had just some sort of an elevation map, but look at that, this one already changes now. And probably we will want to add a little bit of ground fog there too. Let's give it the nonlinear ground fog. There you go. Let's also go to the cloud system and add some puffy clouds. Now in the Howler edition, you can actually create these clouds yourself. There is a particle modeler that's in the animated category of the filters, but in PD Artist you don't have the animation capability, so but it still has those predefined clouds, so it's nice. You can still put those in if you so desire. You can also, let's say, move this thing down back a little bit to the background there, and perhaps a little bit more to the left. There you go. And also a little bit down. Something like that. And then it's probably time to increase the fog just a tad bit, or not. I mean, depending on how much you want to make this look like it's a really foggy planet, or hazy sandstorm conditions prevailing, even though it's kind of a snowy landscape right now. You can also increase the specular highlights there, reduce the intensity of the regular diffuse. So all sorts of really interesting things to make this landscape come to life. And at some point, well, it's time to render that. So when it's time to render, what I would do is, if you have time, give it the anti-aliasing at the highest level, 5. You can change the pre-filter here to make it a little bit more rugged in appearance, or a little bit smoother at 100%, kind of rounded corners. There is also the anti-aliasing here if you're in a hurry, or you don't need it the very best. You do a test render with anti-aliasing off. But if you click and drag this thing here, you can drag it all the way to 5 for the best level anti-aliasing. And that's perhaps a place where you also might want to now store this texture. and there you see it's stored. You can store other things here. The erosion map, you can store the erosion map. Some programs will benefit from having that available. Store the lighting, there's 2 maps for that, and the masks, which indicate where is the grass level, where's the snow level, and where's the rock. So these are masks that can be useful if you want to further paint the very details of the textures that you see here in a very summary way. Alright, so I'm going to render that, click on OK, and that will take a few seconds. Give or take a few. It really depends on how much performance you have on your graphics card, on your GPU, and also on your CPU. What we'll do next, perhaps, is say, well, that was nice, but let's store this image. It's a candidate. It's not the best, perhaps, yet. So let's go undo that. Let's go back into the 3D designer. There it is. And it uses the same parameters as we just had. We see back here there's a little bit of a glitch. We see the edge of that. We may need to scale this up, scale it sideways. There you go. Might need to move it a little bit sideways if you want to see a bit more on this. Might want to rotate it, change the heading. Let's see what else could we do here to frame it a little bit more. Something like that. Move it like this. Perhaps get rid of that depth. There you go. Reduce the light range. And then there is one more thing. If it gets too dark here, you can enable ambient occlusion in multiplicative mode and then increase the light. Or you can enable it in additive mode. And either way, you'll see that it will reveal more details. The dark areas, the bright areas, they're a little bit higher contrast. Let me show you that one more time. If I uncheck the ambient occlusion, you see this appearance. If you enable ambient occlusion, you'll see a slightly different appearance there with perhaps a bit more detail revealed in the dark areas. And of course it really helps with the graininess that you see here. It helps if you have the anti-aliasing at the maximum. That will pretty much get rid of that and give you the best possible appearance on that render. So let's see perhaps one more. I'm going to go to a camera zoom that's almost gone. Reduce the fog so we actually get to see this. And zoom in. Turn around a little bit, something like this. I think we're getting close. And then, the thing is, you don't necessarily render the final pose right here either. It's okay if you have some edges here and you just crop that off, or you mask it with mountains or with the grass we had in the other scene before, right? So let's go something like that. In fact, let's do just one more adjustment on the light source. We might want to have the sun appearing over here. So I'm going to bring it down low, and yeah, something like that. That's cool. And so at that point we have the render that I need. We'll probably put a post lens flare, a post work right here. Let's go store this image. And one more thing we want to do, of course, is put this image here in the background, in the foreground now. Now that one has a white background. We could perhaps make that transparent, right? So let's go and, for instance, make a selection mask by the color, right? And select the white color. So it selects everything that's white, and of course, we have primary focus there on the background that's in there, and then we can go and perhaps adjust or invert that selection. So we actually invert it, and now we have the grass and the trees selected. And then at that point, we can go and pick that up as a custom brush. And composite that or paint it on top of this one here, right? Or this one here, I think. So let's see, is that the one? Yep. And so what I'll do is I'll simply enable the brush to bring it here in full opacity now. There it is. And this one's of course in need of a little bit more work. We can focus on that in a different tutorial, because I have the edges showing, the white edges. So maybe transparency or pre-multiply correction here. We can say we had some white color. Let's go and correct that. It's a little bit better. It's still not perfect, but we know where to take this. We could go and, for instance, paint that like that, stamp it on, or even better, really, just redo that. Right. So let's go and select this brush again, the particles, and go over here to enable the foliage, and same foliage as we had before, I suppose. Yep, there it is. And something like this will do just perfect. And then we can go to the other one, which is the particles for the grass. And that one probably still has the grass. Yeah, it's a different color map though, different gradient now, so we may need to choose a different one here again, or just load it again and have this go in like that. And so there we are. Now we are ready to add our lens flares. Let's go disable the preview on the brush. Let's go and put that in the center and minimize all these guys. Okay, and oh, we have a number of resources that we stored. They're all here. Let's go minimize them. And then, so at this point, the final touch will be perhaps to add a little bit of contrast, expand dynamic range, all sorts of things we can do here with the photographic filters for soft shadow, soft enhancement, soft contrast improvement, and of course, right-click on the gradient tool here to get the lens flares. And the lens flares dialog, we'll use that to put the sun right around here, perhaps another one right on top, perhaps yet another one. I created one. Oh, no, I was in the other program in Howler. We'll just put that there, and you know, if it's too much, we can undo that and just try a different color. This one's a bit more of a bluish. This one's a little bit more yellowish. There you go. I like that. All right. Well, thanks for watching, and welcome to PD Artist.